Good day, everyone. Welcome to our session on endpoint management and security solutions. In today's training session, we'll be covering the patch management module in Desktop Central. On behalf of the ManageEngine family, I wish you all a very happy day and thank you all for being interested in our endpoint management and security solutions. Let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Karthika and I'm a product specialist at ManageEngine. I work predominantly with the endpoint security products and I'll be your trainer for this session. Before we begin the training, here's a quick overview of the products offered by ManageEngine. As you can see, we offer a wide variety of products to handle any and all of your endpoint management and security concerns. To know more about the products, you can visit the website that we've mentioned below. So in today's Desktop Central free training, we will be discussing about handling patch management in a digital workspace or patch management for a distributed workforce. This is how the training session is going to pan out. So this is series 1 and it is a 6-week series. So we're in the first week and we'll be covering patch management. So apart from this session, we also have another session at 11:30 a.m. EDT today. So for more details about the training series, you can also check out our webpage mentioned below. So once you successfully complete all the 4 series, you'll be awarded the training participation certificate. Now let's move forward with the patch training. As for the agenda today, since this is the first session in the 6-week series, we will begin with the basics about what Desktop Central is and how it can be used to achieve complete endpoint management. Following this, we will come up with a checklist to get you all ready to go back to office. So this will include strategic and priority-based patching along with network access control. Finally, we'll be concluding the session by discussing a few frequently asked questions that we came across during our interaction with our customers. We will also have a quick Q&A session post that. Feel free to ask questions anytime during the session. I have an expert panel with me who would love to answer all of your questions. I would also like to let you guys know that this session is being recorded and the recorded version will be sent to your registered email IDs. So for today's session, I'll be using Desktop Central build version 10.1.2147.1 for the demonstration purposes. Let's move forward. So across the globe, we've started embracing the new normal. And for an IT admin, this new normal now means a distributed workforce. Let's take a live example to understand this situation better. So John is one of our customers and heads the IT team of a successful chain of hotels. John and his team are in charge of managing over 10,000 endpoints spread across the globe. So as you can see from the picture, the requirements vary in terms of the endpoints managed, bandwidth, and the mode of connectivity, not to mention the mode of management on premises and cloud. So the IT team has to figure out ways to test the newly released patches, deploy them periodically to all the endpoints, and overall monitor and secure these endpoints. So John needs to enable, manage, and secure work from home devices for 2 major types of users. Users who connect to the Desktop Central server using the VPN and users who connect over the internet or the roaming users. Apart from these 2 types of remote users, John should now revise a strategy to get the back to office machines up and running as offices across the globe are slowly opening up for business. Let's take a look at how he handles these challenges. So, managing and securing devices across a distributed workforce, like the one I mentioned above, can be quite challenging for IT admins who now have to consider various factors. So, some of the factors that need to be considered are the user bandwidth constraints, keeping the end user informed about the patching schedule and tasks, time constraints while applying the patches, and of course, the reboot schedules and troubleshooting. So we'll take a look at how to handle these issues shortly. But before that, let's get an understanding of what exactly Desktop Central is. So Desktop Central is a unified endpoint management solution that helps you manage various types and flavors of devices from a single centralized console. So now, what do we mean by a unified endpoint management solution? Forrester, a popular market research company, defines UEM or Unified Endpoint Management solutions as products that allow securing and managing devices from a single console. So as you guys can see, Desktop Central perfectly fits this description, and what's more, comes equipped with a UEM edition as well. So with the Desktop Central's UEM edition, we get a complete integration of client management or traditional management abilities combined with mobile device management, OS deployment, and modern management for Windows 10 and Mac OS. So like I said, with Desktop Central's UEM edition, you can handle all your endpoint requirements right from device provisioning through ensuring its security to getting comprehensive reports and analytic data with respect to its performance and status. Again, you can manage a variety of endpoints like laptops, desktops, mobiles and tablets, servers, point of sale devices, and browsers using Desktop Central. Customers and users have also recognized Desktop Central as a wholesome UEM solution, and we've been awarded various accolades for the same under different forums. Let's quickly take a look at the supported operating systems. The Desktop Central, as you guys know, can be used to manage Windows, Mac, and Linux endpoints. The Desktop Central server, however, has to be hosted on a Windows platform. So here we have the complete list of operating systems that are supported by Desktop Central. To know more, you can contact our support team. So as Desktop Central users are mostly aware of, patch management comes as a feature in Desktop Central. So if you guys require a dedicated solution for patch management, you can also avail Patch Manager Plus, which is our standalone product that is available both on premises and on cloud. So now that we've covered the basics, let's get started on the patch training part of the session. The Desktop Central supports the patching of over 1,000 applications across Windows, Mac, and Linux, and about 850 plus third-party applications as well. So you can find a complete list of our supported applications in the URL mentioned below. Before we go ahead with creating a patching schedule, let's get a few doubts cleared regarding the updates which should be installed. So let's take a look at Microsoft's method of releasing updates and its recommendations to installing these updates. So as you can see, the important updates when it comes to Windows 7 and 8 are the security only updates and the security monthly quality rollups. When it comes to Windows 10, we have the optional updates, the cumulative updates, and the feature packs. So when we talk about the cumulative updates, they include both the security and reliability updates bundled together. And these are used to address new security issues. They also include the updates that were released in the past. When we discuss about the feature packs, these are released twice a year and they come with new features. Each feature pack is serviced for a period of 18 to 30 months. We've seen that most of our customers only install security updates. This selective approach to patching can leave your network open to a lot of other vulnerabilities. Microsoft recommends a full patch approach. So even if you give high priority to security updates and install them immediately on release, consider installing other updates at least on the third or fourth week from release. This way, you can keep your network completely patched. Now let's quickly take a look at how the patch workflow is in Desktop Central. So when a patch is released, it is available in the vendor website. Our patch crawler team repeatedly probes the internet to draw vulnerability and patch information from the vendor website. Once this information is received, the patches are tested in our environment for successful installation, compatibility, and the applicability. After this, it will be pushed to our central patch repository. So the Desktop Central server subscribes to the central patch repository periodically to download the vulnerability database. So once this sync is done, the client machines are scanned for the missing patches. So after identifying the missing patches, the Desktop Central server then directly downloads the missing patches from the vendor website. When it comes to branch offices or your remote offices, the distribution server reaches out to the primary Desktop Central server for the patch data and tasks. So if you guys have configured our direct download feature, then the patches are directly downloaded from the vendor website to the client machines in the branch offices as well. So this direct download workflow is applicable for our roaming users as well. Additionally, roaming users can also reach out to our primary Desktop Central server via the Secure Gateway server for the patch data and tasks. So this is the basic workflow of patch management in Desktop Central. Now that we've covered that, let's take a look at how endpoints can be managed in the work from home scenario. So like we saw in the example cited below, John and his team would now have to cater to two broad types of users. The first are the users who connect via the internet or the roaming users. The second type being the VPN users. So for the first type of users who connect over the internet or the roaming users, they can connect to the primary Desktop Central server through the Secure Gateway server. So thereby, using a Secure Gateway server will allow you to not expose the Desktop Central server to the internet, and all the communication between the agents or the client machines and the primary Desktop Central server will be securely routed through the Secure Gateway server. Now let's take a look at our second type of users. Those are our VPN users. So users who connect to the company's network through VPN. So in such cases, the agents can access the primary Desktop Central server with no problem at all. But since the entire workforce might now use VPN to reach the company's network, we might face VPN and internet bandwidth restrictions. So these bottlenecks can be solved if we are careful in selecting the updates to install, and if we exclude certain bulky updates such as cumulative updates. Another way with which you can solve this VPN bottleneck is by configuring our direct download feature. So we introduced this direct download feature especially for the work from home or the roaming users. So this feature can be used to save bandwidth in the server hosted network, because using these features, the agent directly downloads the patches from the vendor websites through the internet. So the prerequisite to use this option are, you need to upgrade your Desktop Central build. So this feature, the direct download, is available from build number 10.0.546. So you can upgrade your Desktop Central to a build that is higher than 10.0.546 for this feature, and you can enable the direct download option. So we have also furnished a detailed step-to-step forum post for setting up the direct download option that you can view and go about setting it up as well. So now that we have seen how to handle or patch our endpoints that are remote or working from home, let's go ahead and create a checklist for our back to office transition now. So what has to be done for a seamless transition back to office? So here are the 4 things that you need to check out primarily for your back to office machines. The first of them being the compliance checks. To check the compliance status of machines coming back to office and quarantine the non-compliant machines. Secondly, create a list of the applications that you might have missed out on patching due to various issues such as network or user issues, and initiate a patch task for these machines. Thirdly, some of you might not have deployed feature packs for your work from home machines because of bandwidth constraints and so on. So go ahead, check that out and deploy feature packs to all of your back to office machines. Lastly, you can embrace the immediate deployment option by checking user availability, as our aim is to get our back to office machines fit for production as soon as possible. So now that we have come up with a 4-point checklist, let's devise a strategy to achieve the things on our checklist now. So like we discussed, we are going to use network access control to check the compliance status of our machines that are coming back to office. Then we're going to come up with the business critical applications that have not been patched. So we're going to test the critical patches for such applications and deploy them on our highly vulnerable back to office machines. So this strategy aims to ready machines for production as soon as possible. So before we initiate any of these patch tasks, we're going to create restore points and configure announcements to keep the end users informed about our patching tasks. So let's look at them one by one now. So like I mentioned, the first step is to check the compliance status of our machine coming back to office. So this can be achieved using our Network Access Control or NAC module. So the Network Access module checks the compliance status of managed endpoints and based on the results, restricts access to network resources for non-compliant machines. So Network Access Control or the NAC module is available as a separate module to Desktop Central. So here we have the workflow of the Network Access Control module. So the IT admin can configure software and service compliance checks on the quarantine policy generator. So once these policies or checks are configured, the agent checks the managed endpoints to see if they are compliant with the policies that the admin configured. If compliance is achieved, these machines are deemed fit to work. If compliance is not achieved, these machines are quarantined, as in they are restricted from accessing other network resources. So the problems that cause non-compliance can be solved and the compliance status can be rechecked manually, or by default, the compliance status is checked on every refresh cycle. So if after rechecking you find that your machines are compliant, then you can push them to production. So this is how the quarantine policy generator looks like. On the left-hand side, you can configure the compliance checks for software and services, as you can see. So based on your company's compliance requirements, you can configure these checks. On the right-hand side, you can set up the quarantine settings. So if the compliance policies that you have configured here are not met or satisfied, then you can set up network restrictions such as blocking all of network access, blocking only internet access in a particular range, allowing certain domains, blocking certain IP addresses, and so on. So once you have configured both your compliance checks and your quarantine settings, you can go ahead and generate new policy. And based on this policy, your managed endpoints will be checked for compliance. So you can find more details about the module on this web page that we've mentioned below, or you can also reach out to our support to know in detail of how to download and use this module. Like I told you guys, before we go ahead and set patch tasks, which are specific to our machines coming back to office, it is always a good practice to have backup in the form of restore points before we proceed. So let me show you how you can create restore points on Desktop Central and deploy them to your back to office machines now. So I'm going to take you to the product console now. So for today's session, I'm using Desktop Central, build version 10.1.2147.1. So this particular machine that I'm using has the endpoint security add-on enabled on it. So that is why you can find the threats and patches option here instead of the traditional patch management option. You can also find other options such as browsers, application control, BitLocker, and device control when you enable the endpoint security add-on. Now let me show you how you can create restore points. So go to the configurations tab on Desktop Central. Here you have the script repository. So you can find the option to enable restore points under the templates if you haven't already pushed it to the repository. If you have already pushed it to the repository, go to repository, run a search for this particular script, and you can find the enable system restore script right here. So all you have to do is click on the action and create a computer configuration. So you can name your configuration accordingly with the script, and then you can deploy this configuration to all of your back to office machines. So you can select them from here. Go ahead, you can deploy them or deploy it immediately as well. So this way you would have deployed a script for creating restore points to all of your back to office machines before you start on a patch task. So that's done. The next thing that we need to keep in mind is to create announcements so that our end users are informed about the patching tasks that you are planning on running. So let me quickly show you how you can create announcements using Desktop Central. So go to the tools option available here. You can find the announcements right here. So click on that. So these are all the announcements that are already created for certain target systems. You can go ahead and create a new announcement now. So you can name it, let's say, patch tasks. You can give a suitable message. For instance, you can tell them about the time at which your patch tasks will be run, ask them to refrain from opening applications or running business critical tasks during that particular time, and so on. You can choose to start the announcement at a particular date and time. So we would recommend you to start an announcement at least a week before your actual patch task. You can also mention the time at which you start the announcement. You can also mention the date and time at which you want the announcement to end, and the frequency at which you want it displayed on your client systems. So you can do display it multiple times at the frequency of your choosing, say once in 2 days or so on. Finally, you can select the target users to which you want this announcement to be displayed. So you can go ahead and select your remote office, or you can select an entire domain and all the users under that particular domain, or you can go ahead and select the custom groups that you have created. You can also give out announcements for individual users. So all you have to do is go select a domain and then select the users that you want the announcement to be displayed to from this particular domain. So once all of that is configured, you can give save and your announcements will be successfully up and running. So now that we've created our restore points and put out announcements, we can start with our patch tasks for the back to office machine. Let us quickly go back to the presentation to recollect the points. So now we'll be starting with our priority patching, that is identifying the critical applications that have not been patched, then testing these critical patches before deploying them to our production environment. So let me show you how you can automate the testing and approval of critical patches using Desktop Central. So I'll be taking you back to the console now. Under threats and patches, you have the option to test patches. So you can find that under the deployment here. You have the option to test and approve. So click on that. These are test groups that have already been created. To create a new test group, you can go ahead and give add group. So here you can create a test group with Windows machines, another group with Mac machines, another group with Linux machines, in case you're running a multi-OS environment. So for demonstration purposes, I'm going to go with Windows today. So you can go ahead and select from the groups that you have already created, or you can go ahead and create a custom test group as well. So to create a new test group, just go and click on create new group. You can name the group accordingly. You can select the category. Test groups can only be static and static unique. Dynamic groups are created based on a particular criteria. For instance, let's say operating system equals Windows 10. So if you're going to keep a criteria like this, any new Windows 10 machine that is managed by Desktop Central will automatically become part of this test group. So that is an undesirable effect, which is why we do not allow test groups to be of the dynamic nature. So you can either go with static or static unique for the category of test group. So once you've selected the category, you can go ahead and just push the machines that you want as part of your test group right here. So once that is done, give save and your custom group will be created successfully. So once you have the group, you can select the same from here. The next step is to select the updates that you want tested. So here we're going to test our critical and important updates. So I'm going to go ahead and select the critical and important updates that I want tested. Ideally, you need to test all the updates that you're planning on deploying to your production environment. So I'm going to test them on all of my applications. You can also go ahead and test them on selective applications, leaving out a few as well. But for now, I'm going to go with testing these updates on all of my applications. Again, for third-party updates, I'm going to test the critical and important updates. So for Windows machines, you can also test your antivirus definition updates and driver updates. So it is preferable if you create a separate test group for these updates as well. Next, for the deployment criteria, let's choose a particular number of days to deploy the patches from release. I'm going to choose a suitable deployment policy as well. So you can view the details of the deployment policy here. You can also create a new deployment policy for your test group of machines as well. So once you have selected the deployment policy for the patches to the test group of machines, the next step is your notification setting. So this is an optional step. You can select this and choose to get notified about the testing status by giving your email ID here. If you've configured our mobile app, you can also select the technicians that need to be notified about the testing process in this section. As for the final section, it is the approval mode for the tested patches. The patches that are successfully tested can be automatically approved if you select this option right here. So they'll be automatically approved after a particular number of days from when they have been successfully tested. Only approved patches will be deployed through the APD or the automate patch deployment tasks. So in this way, you have configured a test group and you have completely automated the testing and approval of patches using Desktop Central. Let's quickly go back to our presentation now to take a look at the other points. So here you have your new test group has been created. Let's go back to our presentation now. So we have tested and approved our critical patches. The next check that we saw was deploying feature packs or checking if the latest feature packs has been deployed to your back to office machine. So this can be easily identified. Let me show you how it can be done. So on the console, under threads and patches, go to the patches option right here. And you have the missing patches list. So to check if any of your machines are missing feature packs, all you have to do is run a search here. The feature packs. You can find the list of the feature packs that are missing in these machines as well. So as you can see, this particular feature pack is missing in one of our managed machines. You can find the details of the machines missing it if you drill down as well. So let's check it once more. So we find a feature pack missing in a particular machine. So what you can do is just select this feature pack and give install package. You can give it a name according to your requirements, and you can go ahead and install this feature pack on the machine that is missing it as well. So using the missing patches view, you can easily find out if any of your machines are missing critical feature packs and so on. Let's go back to our presentation now. Final check on our checklist is deployment based on user availability. So since our objective is to get the machines coming back to office fit for production as soon as possible, we can utilize the deploy immediately option by checking the user logon details. So you can go ahead and check when your users are logging on. So you can run query reports for the same. You can get the log on time and the log off time. See when they are logging in and out in a day. And based on that, you can go ahead and deploy critical patches to these machines immediately when they are in office or so on. So with that, we have checked off the major or the immediate requirements to get ready to go back to office. Now let us devise separate patch policies for the machines that are still working from home. So let's create a separate deployment policy for our work from home machines and associate this policy with an APD task or an automate patch deployment task for our work from home endpoints. So while creating this deployment policy for our work from home machines, we will be allowing the end user to skip deployment, and we will also give the end user the liberty to choose when he or she wants his or her system to be rebooted as well. Apart from that, the option to allow the end user to apply the patch is also part of our roadmap. So this will be available shortly. So let me take you to the console and show you how you can create an APD task for your work from home endpoints and associate that task with a customized deployment policy for your work from home endpoints as well. So we're back on the console. So under threads and patches, you have the deployment option, wherein you have the option to create deployment policies right here. So click on this. So you can find the policies that have already been created. To create your own customized policy for your work from home machine, click on create policy. So you can name the policy accordingly. I'm going to call it work from home machine. Creating a deployment policy is a 4-step process. The first step is selecting your deployment schedule, selecting the window as to when you want the deployment of the patches to take place. So for this, you can go with the regular split, wherein you mention the weeks and the days that you want this deployment to happen, or you can go with our very own Patch Tuesday split, wherein you can mention the weeks based on Patch Tuesday. For instance, you can keep the Patch Tuesday week for your testing process, and you can initiate the deployment in the weeks after Patch Tuesday as well. So based on your requirements, you can go with the split that you want. So for now, let's say I'm going to go with the regular split. So these are for our work from home machines. Yes, I guess we're back on track. Sorry for the disruption. We had a small connection issue that has been sorted now. So, like I was saying earlier, so you can select the weeks and the days you want this deployment to happen. So, since we're going for our work from home machines, we're going to keep this deployment window as broad as possible. So, I've selected all the weeks and all the days. And you can also keep the deployment window as broad as possible. You can add more schedules to this as well. Similarly, you can choose to download your patches before the deployment window or during the deployment window. So I'm going to go with the anytime the agent contacts the server. So once you select this option, the patches will be downloaded from the server to the agent anytime the agent contacts the server. You can initiate deployment at system startup, refresh cycle, or whichever happens first. So I'm going to go with whichever happens first here. So we have configured our first step, which is selecting the deployment schedules. Once that is done, you can give save and continue. Our next step is configuring the pre-deployment activities. So we have a couple of pre-deployment activities like wake on LAN, pre-deployment reboot, and custom scripts. So you can add these to your pre-deployment activity line. So since it's our work from home machines, I'm not gonna go with a wake on LAN. If you're creating a deployment policy for your machines at office or your servers, you can go ahead and use the wake on LAN option. Now I'm going to go with the pre-deployment reboot. So if you have any machines that are pending reboot from a previous patch task, you can reboot them before this new patch task happens. So under pre-deployment reboot, you have the option to exclude reboot for machines that don't require them, for servers as well. You can also notify the users about the reboot. So you can give the required message title and a notification for your end users about this pre-deployment reboot. So once that is configured, give save and continue. You can also add to the pre-deployment activities. You have the plus sign here. So click on that. You can also add custom scripts to your pre-deployment activities. So let's say you want to stop a particular process before deploying patches to an application. You can go ahead and configure the script for the same. Similarly, you can maybe add a script for taking backup or an image of your system before the patch deployment task and so on. The functions of the custom scripts are innumerable. You can use it for a lot of your specific cases. So once that is done, the third step is configuring your pre-deployment user notification. This is very important when it comes to our work from home users. So it is a good practice to keep them notified about the deployment task. So you can go ahead and check this. You can give a title. You can also give a message. You can also let the users know about it. You can let them know when it will happen and the frequency it will happen as well here. So here we have the option to allow users to skip deployment. So like we saw in the presentation, we'll give the end user the liberty to skip deployment in case they are held up in some business critical task during the patch deployment process. We also have the option to force deployment after a particular number of days from which the user has skipped deployment. For instance, there is a critical or a 0-day patch that has to be installed on your end user system. So even if the user skips the deployment, you can force it after a particular number of days from which the user has skipped deployment. You can also show the deployment progress on client computers and so on. So that's the pre-deployment user notification. So once you've configured the user notification, give save and continue. Your third step is also done. The fourth step is configuring the post-deployment activities or whatever you want to happen after the patches have been installed. So here we have post-deployment reboot and shutdown. We also have the option to add custom scripts here. So when it comes to custom scripts, like I told you guys, if you had, let's say, added a custom script to stop a particular process or application before deployment, you can add another script here to restart it after deployment is over. As for the post reboot and shutdown, drag it, drop it here, and you can configure the same. So it is generally a good practice to reboot your systems once a patch deployment task is over. This way, the patches will be successfully installed and working properly. So you can go ahead and configure the post-deployment reboot. So we have two options. You can force reboot. So this is ideal when it comes to your machines at office. You can force reboot within the deployment window itself for machines like that. For your work from home machines, it is more ideal to go with the delay reboot option, wherein you can give the end user the liberty to select the time at which he or she wants his or her machine to be rebooted as well. They can mention the intervals that will be available on the notification to the end user side. If you select the user defined time, the end user can select the time in the reboot notification that comes up as well. You also have the option to exclude reboot for machines that don't require them and for your servers. So once you have configured your reboot as well, give save and continue. You can find the summary of your deployment policy here, give it a good look, and go ahead and save it. So your customized work from home deployment policy has been created. Now the next part is to associate this policy with an APD or an automate patch deployment task to completely automate your patch routine. So for that, I'm going to go with test and patches. Under deployment, you have the automate patch deployment option. So click on that. These are all the APD tasks that are running already. The best thing about APD tasks is that you only have to configure them once and they will run iteratively every time there is a missing patch that matches the description you have mentioned in the APD task. So let's create one for our work from home machines now. So create a new task. So you can create APD tasks for your Windows endpoints, Mac and Linux endpoints. Now I'm going to go with Windows endpoints. So this again is a 4-step process. You can name your task accordingly. Let's call ours work from home machine patch task. The first step is selecting the applications that you want deployed through your APD task. So this is what I mentioned about the type of patches that you want deployed via your APD task. For instance, under Microsoft Updates, if you're going to select the critical and important security updates, every time there is a missing patch in the target group of systems or your managed systems that match this critical security updates, this APD task will be triggered and those patches will be deployed to your endpoint. So you can go ahead and select optional updates, feature packs, and so on. You can also select non-security updates. So once your Microsoft Updates is selected, you can choose to patch all of your applications. or you can selectively patch few applications. You can selectively exclude few applications like the legacy applications that you do not want patched here as well. You can do the same for your third-party updates. For Windows machines, we will have antivirus definition updates and driver updates as well. However, I would recommend you to create a separate APD task for your antivirus and driver updates. So once you've selected the updates that you want deployed via the APD task, you can go ahead and choose to deploy them after a particular number of days from approval so that you know they are tested. So once this step is done, the next step is selecting our customized deployment policy for this particular APD task. So this task we are mentioning for our work from home machines. So we can select the work from home deployment policy that we created just now. There you go. You can select the customized deployment policy. You can find the details of the policy right here. Like I told you guys, APD tasks will happen iteratively every time there is a missing patch that matches the description that you've mentioned here. So if you want this particular task to stop after a particular time, for instance, if you feel that your work from home machines will come back to office in another 2 months, then you can go ahead and automatically suspend them after 2 months by giving the option right here at the time of your choosing. So this work from home APD task will automatically be suspended in June. So once you've configured that, go to next. The third step and the most important step is selecting your targets or the machines to which you want this particular APD task to be deployed to. So since this is a work from home task, we're going to go with our roaming users. So if you're creating a task for your office machines, you can select your local office machines in your target group of computers as well. Since this is for our work from home machines, I'm going to go with our roaming users. You can also filter out computers from your target set of computers as well. So let's say I do not want this task to be deployed to my Windows 7 machines. So you can just go ahead, select operating systems and choose Windows 7 and exclude all of your roaming Windows 7 machines from this particular task. So once you've selected your targets, the final step is configuring notifications. So you can choose to get notified about your download and deployment status at the frequency of your choosing. You can also attach detailed reports for audit purposes. All of this will be sent to the email ID that you mentioned here at the frequency that you mentioned here. If you have configured the mobile app, you can also get notified via that. So once you have configured your notifications as well, you can go ahead and give save. And your APD task for your work from home machines would have been successfully created. So let's go back to our presentation now. So this is how it looks at your end users computers. So if you give the option to skip reboot, the end user will get a notification like this, wherein he'll get the postponed intervals like 15 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, and so on. So if you select the user defined time, the end user can further go ahead and select the time at which he or she wants his or her machine to be rebooted as well. Now that we've covered our work from home machines, let's take a quick look at the requirements, ideal requirements for a deployment policy for the machines in office or for our servers in office. So for these machines in office or for our servers, we can set the deployment window in the non-business hours. For instance, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. We can also use the wake up on LAN and deploy option that I showed you. You can find it under the pre-deployment activities. You can also go ahead and force reboot within the deployment window for the machines in your office and your servers. So when you give force reboot, this is how it looks on the end user's computer. So you'll have this force reboot notification that is triggered to your end user's computer. So with that, we've covered the working of the patch management module. Let's quickly summarize the capabilities. So we know that it is independent of WSUS. It extends cross-platform support and can be used to patch OS as well as third-party updates. We can leverage various features like test and approve, APD, and flexible deployment to suit your organization's requirements. You also have the option to decline patches. So this is something that I'll be discussing in detail in the upcoming slides. The option to decline patches to a group of computers. For our first-time users or attendees, here's a quick overview of the Desktop Central architecture. So as you guys know, Desktop Central works on the client-server model. So the Desktop Central server can be hosted on the local area network. Since it has a web-based console, you can view the server from anywhere with just the host name or IP address of the system hosting the server, followed by the port details. So in the local area network, the Desktop Central agents can directly contact the server for the patch details and tasks. On-demand tasks are initiated through the notification server. In wide area networks, the Desktop Central agents can directly contact the primary Desktop Central server via the Secure Gateway server. Or in remote offices with more than 20 endpoints, we would highly recommend the use of the distribution server. The distribution server will mediate between the Desktop Central agents and the primary Desktop Central server. Further, Desktop Central can also be used to manage roaming users. So you can enable a NAT in the firewall or configure the Secure Gateway server through which roaming users can contact the Desktop Central server. Desktop Central is also available on cloud. So you can host the Desktop Central server on cloud platforms like Azure and AWS Marketplace. So once the server is hosted on cloud, it can be used to manage agents directly or through the distribution server. Now let's quickly take a look at the frequently asked questions. Question 1. If we have an automatic update scheduled for 100 computers and I choose to have it pre-download patches during the refresh cycle, would all the systems still execute the updates in order? Or would all systems update at the same time since it should already be downloaded? So to answer this question, if you have already downloaded the patches or enabled the option to download the patches before the deployment window, and if these patches have been downloaded before the deployment window, then all of the systems will update at the same time, that is, within your deployment window. Moving on to the second question, local office machines are now working from home. How do I make them contact the Desktop Central server? This was a query a lot of our users had when remote work started. So if you had configured the NAT settings and set up the Secure Gateway server, they can reach out to the Desktop Central server via the Secure Gateway server. They can also reach the server if they are connected to the VPN. If none of this is working out, you can contact our support and they will help you handle this particular scenario. Moving on to the question, do I need to disable WSUS if I use Windows patches and updates on Desktop Central? The answer is no. You don't have to disable the WSUS, but please understand that Desktop Central does not require the WSUS and has its own patch repository. So we would recommend you to disable WSUS. But if you do have it, then the patches deployed via the WSUS will also be shown as installed in the DC's dashboard. So if you do have a WSUS, the patches that are installed through WSUS will also be visible under the installed patches in Desktop Central dashboard. So how do you differentiate between the patches that are installed through Desktop Central and through WSUS? The answer is the patches installed manually or through WSUS will not have the deployment time mentioned. So check for the deployment time. If you have the deployment time, those patches were deployed through Desktop Central. If you do not have the deployment time, those patches were deployed through WSUS or manually. Moving on to our fourth question. Is there a way for Desktop Central to download all necessary patches, then restart only once for end users? So the answer is yes, there is. So you can create an APT task or a configuration with all the necessary patches, and you can set the reboot time well after the deployment time. So in this way, it will only restart once for the end users. Moving on to our fifth question. When I exclude or decline a patch, is this removed from the patch management dashboard? So in addressing this question, there are two ways in which you can exclude patches. The first is the selective exclusion, and the second is a permanent exclusion. So selective exclusion, I would have covered this when I showed you how to create an APT task. So you can go ahead and select the option to patch all applications except a few applications and exclude applications there. As for the permanent exclusion, we have an option to decline patches in Desktop Central. Let me quickly take you to the console and show how this can be done. So under threats and patches, under patches, you have the option to decline patch right here. Click on that. So you can select a group of computers and decline patches to this particular group of computers. For instance, let's select our DevOps team of computers. Let's say we don't want a few patches to be deployed to this group of computers because say they're running a legacy application that you do not want to be patched for whatever your reason may be. You might also have come across certain problematic patches, say patches that were released and that were known to break another functionality or something. So you can include such problematic patches here as well and have them declined. So you can also decline an entire family of patch. For instance, let's say you select to decline Adobe patches. So any new Adobe patch that is released will also be automatically declined to this particular group of computers that we have selected here. Sorry, let me add this once again. You can choose your Adobe patches and add it. So once that is done, go ahead, give next, and you can see the summary of the patches that you have declined to the group of computers that you have declined it to. Go ahead, give save, and these patches will be declined to these computers, which means they will not be shown as missing on this group of computers. They've successfully created a group and declined patches to this particular group of computers permanently. Let me take you back to the presentation now. Take a look at our next question. Our business applications misbehave occasionally, and I suspect that recent patch deployments could be the cause. How can I roll back a patch? So you can uninstall or roll back a patch for which the vendor has supported uninstall. Let me show you how you can do this from the console. So under threads and patches, under patches, you will have your installed patches right here. So you can find all the patches that were installed in your machines right here. You can also find patch uninstallation support right here. So if patch uninstallation is supported by the vendor, all you have to do is select that particular patch and give uninstall patch. So you can create a configuration to uninstall this particular patch on the system that has this patch installed. You can go ahead and deploy this configuration and have your patch uninstalled. Let's go to our next question. While deploying the patches, I came across the errors on multiple clients. How to get these fixed? So the errors that you see on your screen might be because of connectivity issues, missing dependency files, and so on. So next to the errors like this, we have detailed KBs that explain the cause and the mitigation that should be followed. So you can refer those and get these errors fixed. If you're not able to do that, you can also reach out to our support team for help. Moving on to our next question. Is it possible to disable the end user notifications on a single machine? For example, if you have a kiosk. The answer to this is if you need to disable the end user notification on a single machine, you will have to create a separate deployment policy for this particular machine. Let's take a look at our ninth question. How soon are the patches available to me after being released by Microsoft? This again is a very popular question. So the security updates will be available within 6 hours from release, and the non-security updates will be available from 12 hours from release. Moving on to our next question. I could see a difference in the patches discovered by Desktop Central against WSUS or Windows updates. So why is that? So like we told you guys before, only Microsoft updates are visible in WSUS. Desktop Central, on the other hand, supports Microsoft and third-party updates. This could be the reason for the difference in the patches discovered by Desktop Central and WSUS. Moving on to our next question. How are failed patches handled in test and approve? So the patches that fail even in one of the test machines will not be approved. So the reason for the patch failure will be stated in the deployment status. You can qualify this reason and choose to either decline this patch or mitigate the cause of failure and test it again. Moving on to our 12th question. How can I see what are the patches released in this Patch Tuesday cycle and see all the missing systems? So you can do this by adding a very simple filter. Let me take you to the console and show how this can be done. So under threads and patches, you have patches option. So there you have the missing patches option. So here, all you have to do is add a small filter. You can click on the plus here, select release date. You can select custom date and select Patch Tuesday. So last month, Patch Tuesday, March 8. So once you give apply, you can find the patches that were released and are missing on Patch Tuesday. So all of our Patch Tuesday patches have been deployed here. To see missing patches after Patch Tuesday, all you have to do is set release date after Patch Tuesday. give apply, you can find the patches missing that were released after Patch Tuesday, and you can find the systems missing them as well. So one of our systems are missing Google latest update. So all you have to do is just click on the system to drill down and see which system is missing it exactly, and so on. You can select this and install patch from right here also. So let's go back to our presentation now. Moving on to our final question. Some patches have the description of reboot may require. So why is this? So the patch description is based on the description that is specified by our vendor. So if the vendor marks a particular patch as may require reboot, it will be displayed as such on the Desktop Central console as well. So with this, we come to the end of today's patch training. We're still taking questions. So if you guys have any questions, put them down on the questions tab and they shall be answered. Hope this session was useful and informative. We would love to hear your feedback regarding the same. So please rate the session on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the best. The next training session is on endpoint security and it will be conducted on April 13th. You can take up a personalized demo if you would like to know more about the product. Please let us know if you're interested via chat. Our support technicians will get in touch with you right away. I once again thank you all for joining the session. You guys have been an amazing audience. Thank you and have a great day.